What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the OnePlus 10t. So I wanted to pick this phone up just to make sure that I was able to keep up with what OnePlus was doing software wise, because we know my OnePlus 7 Pro, it was not getting Android 13, and I want to see what they were doing with Oxygen OS as far as Android 13 and 14 and stuff like that. So yeah, so I've been messing around with this phone, and let's go ahead and get into it. So you can find these for around 400 bucks on eBay. I see them going for as cheap as 350. And yeah, so it's kind of like a flagship phone. It's like the watered down version of the Pro model, right? And I actually enjoyed this phone more than I thought I would, actually. All right, so let's go ahead and just jump into it, and I want to talk about the overall design here. So this phone, it does have a plastic frame on it, and they are saying that this is a glass back, but it feels like plastic, but it's a matte finish, and I actually really like the design of this phone. I actually think it looks really nice. I just love the textured back and these really big aggressive camera bump right here, and I just really like it. So the overall design looks really nice, but I could tell that they used plastic off the rip, because when I picked it up, it was lighter than most phones of this size that are like flagship phones, glass and metal. So that's one thing that I did notice. And one thing I noticed is that there is no official IP rating on here. So I looked it up in the specs, and I couldn't see any official IP rating. So I'm assuming this phone is not, you can't get this thing wet. Also, one thing that this phone got a lot of flack for was that they took away the alert slider, which is not really a big deal for me, because I rarely use it on the 7 Pro. Not really a big deal, so I didn't really mind. But yeah, I can see how that could be annoying. But overall, the overall design on here and the hardware, it's pretty solid. I do like the overall design of this phone. I actually think it does look nice. So this phone does have a pretty good display. It's the Fluid AMOLED display. It's 6.7 inches, and it's also a 1080p display, 394 for the PPI, and it's 120 Hz HDR10 plus, and it's a really nice looking panel. It's a completely flat panel as well too, and I don't have any issues with it. A lot of people like flat panels. They're easier to put screen protectors on, so I definitely agree there. You got your punch hole in the middle, and you also have pretty slim bezels on here as well too. And overall, the phone is pretty comfortable to hold as well. You do have those nice rounded edges. So overall, I don't have an issue with the display on here. I kind of wish it was 1440p, but like I said, the 1080p does look fine. It does look like a sharp panel for sure here. So I don't have any issues with the display. Like I said, pretty nice bezels, really good color profile, and it's 120 Hz, and it is really liquidy smooth. Alright, so what I was really interested in was Oxygen OS here, and what have they been doing with Oxygen OS? So it kind of looks like, Oppo's operating system a little bit. The one thing I think I don't like about it is the icons. I just don't like the squared off icons like this. But overall, they took away this thing. I can't remember what they called it, but I hated it so much. When you swipe down on Android 12, it was like this little panel right there, and I hated it, and they took it away. So that's something that I really like. It was like a OnePlus thing. I can't remember what it's called. But now we just have Google Now over here, and you can swipe down from any side, and you get to your notifications. And also, they did something really weird with notifications. So when you can't swipe it away, which is something that I think is just, I really don't understand it. So you have to double swipe, right? And yeah, so if you have to swipe this way, but on like everything else, right, like Samsung, Google, you could just swipe to the left, right, and it goes away. But this, you have to swipe to the right, or you have to double swipe. So that's kind of weird. It's just like a weird, unnecessary thing with Oxygen OS. So that's one thing I don't like. But to be fair, the overall Oxygen OS is very fast. It's very smooth, and honestly, it's basically how I remembered it. Like, not too much stuff in here, kind of clean, and you kind of have some customization stuff, but it's definitely not like for power users like One UI, and it's definitely not pure, like clean, like stock Android. So it's kind of somewhere in the middle, I guess. But yeah, so Oxygen OS is okay. It's like I said, it's not like it used to be like when the OnePlus 7 Pro came out. really timely updates. You know, it was just really clean operating system, and there's nothing really wrong with it that I could really point out, but it just doesn't have anything unique to it anymore. Alright, so the gaming performance on the 10T is actually pretty good. It's actually pretty well optimized. It's got 90 frames on here. We're running the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chip on here. It's 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM, and it does a pretty good job. And I was pretty surprised that it's not wasn't overheating or getting pretty hot when playing PUBG or pretty much any other game as well. So I think it does a good job at managing heat, surprisingly. But yeah, so I actually don't have any issues with speed on this phone. It really flies through a lot of stuff. It's very fast. So no issues as far as performance on this phone. It's just kind of an interesting sell. Like, how do you how do you choose this phone, right? In $400 you can get S21 Ultra, and I'll do those comparisons. There are a bunch of other older flagship phones that you can get, so you know, why would you pick this one? I think it's pretty interesting because, you know, it does not really do anything that much unique. It has some cool things about it, but I don't know, we'll get into those comparisons. But let me know what you guys think, and I'll go ahead and show you. Oh snap, oh no, I can't let that guy kill me. Oh no, probably dead. Where'd he go? Yeah, so yeah, show you guys the Geekbench scores here. Here are Geekbench scores for the 8 Gen 1 running Android 13, so this is what you can expect score wise. This phone does have stereo speakers, so let's go ahead and check that out. So they sound pretty decent. Again, not the best that I've ever heard, but good amount of bass. Overall loud enough to, if you want to play music out loud or watch videos on your phone, or even if you're just gaming and you just cover one speaker up, then, you know, it's totally fine. The fingerprint scanner on here is pretty fast, so I don't have any issues with that. It feels almost instant. It's kind of like really far at the bottom though, which is kind of weird. I wish it was kind of more up top, but it is actually really fast. And then you do have face unlock that you can take advantage of as well too. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the cameras. Alright, so the specs on the cameras, it does have a 15 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel ultra wide, and then a 2 megapixel macro. Shoots in 4K 60, and then a 16 megapixel selfie that shoots in 1080 30. So I can tell that they sort of cut the cost here with the cameras. You know, not having a dedicated telephoto lens and stuff like that. Overall, the image quality though, just objectively just taking stills, it does actually do a pretty good job. Now I notice it doesn't have the Hasselblad collaboration with this phone, you know, which is fine. But I noticed that the stills I thought were actually pretty decent. You guys can see for yourself. There's a good amount of detail. It actually is pretty color accurate as well too. But you can tell sometimes you can get some overexposure. It does decent in lower light, you know, settings and stuff like that. Overall, I thought the cameras were decent. Like I said, I would put it against some other phones in this old flagship sort of price range. And yeah, I actually thought the cameras were decent, but not, you know, impressive as far as specs go. Video also was just pretty solid. Like I said, not being able to film in 1080 60 on the front camera is kind of a bummer, or just in general in 4K. And also this phone does have a pro mode, which is really nice as well too, so that's really good. But overall the cameras are, you know, they're just okay. They're not bad at all. Alright guys, and lastly, the battery situation on here. So this phone has a 4800 milliamp hour battery, and it is pretty good on battery life. I'm actually pretty surprised. This phone definitely could last you all day for sure, and the battery situation is pretty interesting here. So with this phone, you do have on here 150 watt wired charging on here, which is absolutely insane. So it's just pretty crazy. I think it's 125 watt for 110 volt sockets, but this thing charges extremely fast. So that's one cool thing. But the other downside is that it doesn't have any type of wireless charging or anything like that. So that's also another spot where they kind of cut it from the Pro model. But overall, it's a very interesting phone. I want to know what you guys think. I think this phone kind of appeals to people who want a OnePlus phone and want to save money. You really rock with the brand. But I'll put it up against some, other phones in this sort of price bracket. And let me know what you guys think.